You want to host this time, John? We're good to go.
Sure.
All right, cool. You good whenever.
And we're live on the Y Ball Starters post game Portland beating Utah. Great win tonight. Kendall, what did you see out there from the boys?
I was pretty happy overall with how we played. I know that Utah was obviously without Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley, which clearly made a huge difference. Utah was running their offense, oftentimes with Joe Ingles handling the ball. They still did have Jordan Clarkson, who had a really good game. I'm pulling the stats up actually as we speak right now. I want to
Yeah,
say
he
that
had
he had
29.
Okay, I was gonna say he had close to 30. I know,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was very apparent that they were missing their two ball handlers throughout the game, and Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley. So that played a huge impact in just their overall kind of offensive apathy throughout the game. But
Yeah.
on the same hand, though, Portland did a really good job. They knew how to exploit Utah's weakness. Utah only ended up shooting as a team from 3 point range 12 of 40. And a lot of that, yes, was open threes, but I think a lot of that was by design. I think Portland was really trying to close in on the paint throughout the game.
Yeah, I agree. It didn't they were really able to keep Utah out of rhythm. Even when even when they were open, it's not like they were taking rhythm shots. They weren't like it didn't feel like Utah had momentum at all, which is really good.
No.
No, Portland seemed to control the game really well. They recovered from that like rough start to begin, but everyone really played their part. I mean, Nurkic down low was just absolutely awesome on the defensive end. He almost really outplayed Gobert. I mean, Gobert did have 20 rebounds, but Nurkic was making him work for sure. And Powell, Lillard, and McCollum all were able to get it going today, which was, I mean, that's killer. When we get three of those guards going, I mean, that can easily turn into 80, 90 points right there. And I mean, that's pretty much a death sentence when you're having three players score 90 points.
Right. And actually, wasn't actually super efficient in this game. He actually was only 3 of 11
Oh,
shooting,
wow.
but
Never
he did.
mind.
It was Carmelo Anthony was the really
Yeah,
efficient one,
Carmelo
but
Anthony.
you were right though. Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum were really good this game. Both of them were doing their thing. Both of them were really attacking hard. CJ was playing a really good mid-range game. It was kind of a classic game for CJ from the mid-range. And Dame was just getting downhill often, playing really good pick and roll offense with Nurkic. Um, Nurkic wasn't super efficient shooting. In fact, he was only 3 of 14 this game. But like you said, he played really good defense. And outside of kind of his finishing, he had a really good game overall, I would say. So, yeah, I mean, you can't really complain about a win over the number one seed, albeit without the two of their best players in the game. But still, a win's a win, especially this time of year and with us chasing the fifth seed, I would say at this point, and trying to stay out of the playing game. It's a big win.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, especially on the road, Portland, I heard they were second best team behind Phoenix, who they play tomorrow on the road this season, tomorrow being their last road game. I think they play at 10 a.m. on Sunday at home against Denver. But yeah, it's absolutely a huge win. They're one win away from saving that guy's house that he bet. uh,
I forgot about
so
that.
they just got to win one of the next two, baby. Um,
So it was 42 wins that he said that.
yeah, there's 42 wins he needs them to get to, so they need to go one and one to the rest of the way. So it's looking pretty decent. I mean, they just got to get one of them. But yeah, no, they're keeping pace with the Mavericks for the 5 seed, which is really impressive. Kind of surprising. They looked really sluggish and slumping after that 5 game losing streak. Very impressive 10 games stretch by them going 9-1.
It's been very odd when we were going through that 5 game. It wasn't even the 5 game losing streak. Like that just kind of felt like almost the climax. Like kind of everything had been boiling to that point, and the season had already been very underwhelming. And then that was just kind of the icing on the cake, right? There was that 5-game slide. And I mean, I think we all thought as Blazer fans that the season was over with at that point, and we were just going to be fighting for a 7th or 8th seed just to get slaughtered in the first round. But for us to come back, I think it's been a testament to what effort can do, because I think that we were not seeing a full effort consistently by the Portland Trailblazers game in and game out like we have been over the last 10, 11 games. And it's just been odd to watch them crank it up. I don't know if that's because them all being veterans now, maybe they feel like that they can do that. I don't know if that's the way that I would have liked them to do it, but I guess kind of what's been your takeaway from this 10, 11 game stretch?
Yeah, I think they've really locked in. I think they have finally realized that they can't conserve any more energy. I think they've been trying to conserve energy as much as possible this year.
Yeah.
Um, but I think this is the time that they've been waiting for. I think right after that 5-game losing streak, they probably had a meeting and said something similar. It's just this is it. Like, this is that final push. This is time. This is time to use all your energy. Pro athletes, so they know their bodies, but this is the time to really push for it, because they were at a spot where they were just competing to just barely get into the playoffs, and now they're competing to be the top of the bottom half of the playoffs at being at the 5 seed. So yeah, they've entered playoff mode, and their playoff mode is pretty impressive. It's going to be interesting to see going forward how they fare in the playoffs, because this team, I mean, if they play like this, I mean, you would got to think they've got a chance in the first round, don't you?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Especially, I mean, it's going to be really tough. I think that tomorrow is going to be our toughest game of this 3-game stretch against
Yeah.
Phoenix. Especially, ironically, I think with us beating Utah, that puts Phoenix only a game and a half back now of Utah. So that gives them more of a reason to play harder against us. So in a sense, we kind of helped Phoenix still have a hope for that 8 seed in.
100%.
Of course, with the Lakers being in such a spot where they could still end up getting that 7th seed, nobody wants that 2 seed. That's going to be the least desirable seed right now. So Phoenix is going to try their hardest to get out of that 7th seed. And quite frankly, with Utah banged up, I need to check Utah's schedule.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
It's gonna be interesting, because even at the 3 and the 4, there's only a game separating Denver and the Clippers. So maybe Portland, I mean, no
uh,
matchups that are at all guaranteed.
do you mind kind of repeating the previous like 10 seconds before you cut out?
Oh yeah, I mean, just looking at the Clippers and Nuggets, they're only a game separated between them as well. So no positions are set in the West right now. I mean, everything is
No.
completely up for grabs.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of it is pretty schedule based. So the Clippers are, yeah, like you said, the Clippers are 1 game up, and the Clippers, let's see. Stalling for time. Okay, so the Clippers finish up. They play at the Hornets, at the Rockets, and at the Thunder. So pretty
3
much
wins.
tomorrow's their last game to even have a chance of losing. I mean, they're not going to lose to the Rockets or Thunder, I would imagine.
It would take a lot. Like, they could rest their starting lineup and win that game pretty handily, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so too. And the Nuggets play the Timberwolves, the Pistons, and then us, the Blazers, to wrap things up. So I would kind of think. Do you know who has the head to head between the Clippers and Nuggets?
I do not.
If the
Yeah, I'm not
if the
sure.
Clippers have the if the Clippers have the head to head, I mean they're pretty much locked into the 3 seed for,
Yeah.
yeah. And
And looking at
so
the Jazz schedule, their last 2 games are at the Thunder and at the Kings. So they should win both those. So they are probably going to be the 1 seed.
Yeah, Jazz are probably going to be the 1 seed. I would have to think the Jazz are going to be the 1 seed. And then you've got Phoenix, who ends the year off with the Blazers, and then they actually play the Spurs twice. So the Suns definitely
Oof,
have the toughest schedule out of.
that is
I just
tough.
don't see the I just don't see the Suns passing up the Jazz. I think you're
I don't
right based
either.
on that schedule. I
Which
still think
means
that
you
they're
could
going to
be
put a
looking at Chris Paul versus LeBron James in the first round of the playoffs.
which would be incredible. Here's the thing, though, is
Upset alert. I mean, 7 seed, 2 seed, but the opposite way you would think with Braun and AD at the 7 seed.
well, what I was going to say even is let's say the Lakers do end up in that 7 seed. If they do end up playing Golden State, that is not in a 1 game match. That is not a for sure win for the Lakers.
100%. 100%. I would imagine they would win. I just don't see there's no one on the Lakers to match AD is the problem.
No, they don't have anybody to match AD, but at the same time, in a 1 game, this isn't like a seven. If this was over a 7 game series, yeah, of course, I'd take the Lakers in probably 5 games, maybe six if Steph Curry had an unbelievable series. But that's the thing is, I think Golden State can get a game against the Lakers in a 7 game series. And that game could be that 1 game right there. That might be all they need. If Steph Curry goes off for 50, if Andrew Wiggins can have a decent game, if Draymond Green has kind of a throwback retro Draymond Green type game, they are capable of beating the Lakers in just a 1 game matchup. I'm going to take the silence as John agreeing with me right here. Uh, there he is.
Oh, can you hear me?
There's my
I
guy.
mean, I agree with you. If I was betting money, I would take the Lakers. But yeah,
Yeah,
they absolutely could take the game. I mean, either way, I imagine Utah and Phoenix are pretty even as far as how good they are. Both are
right.
very, very good teams. But I mean, if you're the Lakers or the Warriors, I mean, I don't think there's much difference between playing either one. Assuming those are the two teams that make the playoffs, that would be my assumption. I assume the Warriors would beat the winner of Memphis and San Antonio, but maybe
Yeah.
not. I mean, maybe we see Memphis or San Antonio make the playoffs. Maybe the Lakers are the ones out. I mean, that would be
that,
extremely surprising.
that would
But
be
I mean, it's not
incredible.
impossible. Maybe Portland's the one that misses it, or
That's true.
Dallas.
That's true. Portland could still miss the playoffs if they lose their last 2 games here down the backstretch. I mean, anything's possible. Again, of going up against Steph Curry. Steph Curry is not somebody who I want to match up against, and that's the whole.
Hundred percent.
If we were playing somebody like Memphis or San Antonio in the play-in,
We would
I
win.
would be extremely tempted just to say, let's take our chances that we're not going to lose 2 games in a row in a play-in situation, and we're still going to make the playoffs, and let's get a better matchup for us. But since it is Golden State in there, you just there's that's
Wait,
a
you were saying you
stupid
would
risk.
intentionally lose a play-in tournament game?
No, not intentionally lose a play-in tournament game. I'm saying
Oh.
intentionally lose to get in the play-in tournament. If it was like somebody like
Oh.
if it was somebody like San Antonio who you're matched up against, like this year's version of San Antonio, or I would say even
Even then, I
Memphis.
wouldn't want to play more games.
No.
But I mean, it's going to be very interesting because I mean, all I mean, looking at the 4 teams going into the play-in, assuming it's the Lakers, Warriors, Grizzlies, and Spurs, all 4 are relatively inconsistent teams. I mean, albeit the Lakers having to deal with a lot of injuries, it can do with that. But neither like none of the 4 you like um look at a game and you're sure they're going to win or lose.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely it's definitely going to be very interesting. I really like that the NBA installed this play-in
Yeah.
format into the tournament this year. I think it makes it a lot more exciting, and I know that there's a few fan bases and teams that probably aren't too hot on it right now, but I think overall
It's
it's really good for the sport, and it makes we've never had a regular season since I've been watching NBA, since anybody's been watching NBA, where the regular season has mattered this much. Like I actually had to care about tonight's game. In the past, it would have been like, Yeah, I hope we win because I want to maintain the 5th seed for Portland, of course. But that
Yeah.
added element of trying to avoid the play-in, like that made it all the more exciting that we wouldn't have had in the years past.
100%, 100%. It's really crazy. It's going to be interesting to see if it sticks along. Be interesting to see what the reception is from the players, both that played in it and that don't play in it. But it is a cool wrinkle. It makes every single position in the West matter so much. And it makes it interesting for
Yeah.
the ones and the two, that you do get that extra, like technically a bye, because your opponent is coming off playing a game or two games. But you don't get to game
Right.
plan for them, which is an added wrinkle that they wouldn't have either.
That's definitely true. Remind me, this was a 1-year trial that they were doing for this, right?
I
Technically.
believe so. I would imagine so. I'm not 100% sure, but that's my guess at least.
Yeah, I thought that this was a one year trial, and then they were going to, because it started obviously with the play in last year in the bubble, and then they liked the
Yeah.
idea, so they expanded on this year. But I would imagine that it sticks around. I'd be surprised if it doesn't, just because of that added element of just the regular season mattering more, and there's less of an incentive for teams who are in that 9, 10, even 11, or in some years maybe the 12 slot to tank and just give up on the season.
I forget. I
Yeah.
think Indiana.
Sorry, you cut.
Oh my gosh. Um, it keeps Memphis and San Antonio, and then I think it's Washington and Indiana in the race where they would, especially those 10 seeds, they would at this point, they would be toast. They would be resting their players, like throwing in the young guys. And if you look at the
Yeah.
Eastern
Yeah.
Conference, I mean, Washington, you got to think has a legit chance to make the playoffs from the 10 seed. So it's a cool wrinkle. It may get us Westbrook and Beal into the playoffs in a year that they wouldn't have ordinarily been in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Washington, I know that they just lost tonight to the Hawks, but with Beal and I don't know if Beal was playing tonight or
No,
not.
he's hurt. I think he would be back for the
He is
play-in, but I'm
still
not
out.
100% sure.
Yeah, it was a hamstring injury that he was dealing with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was the whole Bazemore pulling hamstrings. Yeah. Such a
The
weird
whole
story.
beef.
But oh my gosh, NBA beefs. There's nothing like it. It's so drama.
Absolutely crazy.
It's like a middle school like drama fest. It's interesting to watch as an outsider. But yeah, getting back to it though, Portland now sits 21 and 49 on the season, tied with Dallas. Obviously, we've got that tiebreaker, so Portland is still the 5th seed overall. We'd be currently matched up with the Denver Nuggets. Man, let's talk about kind of our two playoff potential matchups here, and we're gonna be, for those of you, if anybody's listening right now, we're going to be doing these streams a bit more frequently now with the playoffs coming up. So we should be streaming tomorrow night. And then I'm sure that we're probably going to do a special for Sunday,
Yes,
talking
sir.
about playoff matchups. We'll probably expand more on just the general NBA too for that one, not just Portland. But yeah, so we've got either the Clippers or the Nuggets as our potential playoff matchups. Obviously, based on what we were looking at, it seems like LA is going to end up in the 3 slot and Denver's going to add up in the 4 slot. Uh, I I still think that Portland probably drops one of these two last games. I hope that I'm wrong about that. If that's the case, that would probably slot us into the 6, unless if we drop both and we drop to 7th. Kind of how do you feel about the matchups with the Clippers and the Nuggets?
Yeah, it's tough. Neither are particularly good matchups. It's tough. The Clippers are not the best. I believe they're second best 3-point shooting team. Utah being the best, but
You're
had an
right.
off night tonight. Clippers is tough because their best players are wings, and we're pretty small to be completely
Yeah.
honest. So it's tough. Dame's had a lot of success against Paul George in the playoffs before. Obviously the Oklahoma City series. And there's a little bit of beef between Pat Bev and Dame and Paul George and Dame. So it'd be a very intriguing series to say the least. Tough series for sure. I mean, Clippers got a lot of veteran leadership and a lot of dudes that have been in championship games. Um, but looking at
Yeah.
Denver, I mean, you got Jokic, who's just so incredible. It'd be interesting to see how healthy
He's
they'll be if they
amazing.
can get Barton and Monte Morris back. Because, I mean, if they don't have those two guys, Portland's got a legit shot at beating them. With them there, I mean, you almost got to feel it's kind of a toss up, right?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely like our odds a lot better against Denver than I do with the Clippers. I mean, obviously, any series with Jokic is going to be extremely difficult, and I wouldn't just say that it's going to be even necessarily tilted towards Portland being the favorite. But I do feel like that with Jamal Murray being out, at some point that is going to affect Denver having that legit second star scoring punch just player in a playoff series. That is a big hit, and they've played really well without him. But I do think at some point that does catch up with them, and I think that's something that could catch up with them in a 7-game playoff series. Now, Michael Porter Jr. is really broken out, so some of that depends on how he does. But I do think I would rather play the Nuggets than the Clippers.
100%. I would too. The Nuggets scare me less than the Clippers. That being said, do I think we could be either team? I mean, if we keep playing like this, I think we probably could. But we would need to be playing really well. I would say both teams are probably still better than Portland, but not by nearly the amount of margin I would have said 2 weeks ago. So I think Portland's got a chance, but I mean, we're gonna have to watch. Are you really us?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting for sure. I think you're a little bit more optimistic than me because I don't think that we beat the Clippers. I just think between, especially with their addition of Rondo, and then they've got the Morris brother, they got Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, like you said, most of their top players and top scorers are wings. I don't think that we can keep up with that. That's kind of our weakness. That's been the hole in our roster for years now. And I think that their roster exploits our weakness way too much. And it's the same reason we struggle with the Lakers. The Lakers are a big team. They're a physical team. We just don't have the pieces to compete with big physical defensive teams. We just don't. And the Clippers and the Lakers are the two teams that can exploit that. I think I would give us a better shot against the Suns and the Jazz than I would the Lakers and the Clippers.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I'd way rather play Denver. Yeah, the Clippers would be really, really tough. But I mean, I thought that Portland didn't stand a chance against the Thunder a couple years ago in the first round of the playoffs, and we beat them in 5.
Yeah.
So I mean, Portland proves me wrong oftentimes. So I mean, I like to stay optimistic because they do some weird stuff sometimes. Sometimes they like pull things out of nowhere. Like this, like this stretch where they've won. Is it 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 11 now?
Yeah, it's one of those two.
Yeah, like they sometimes they just kind of surprise me. So yeah, I don't think they would beat the Clippers, but I mean, I wouldn't say that like, oh, for sure the Clippers would beat us because I mean, sometimes just weird stuff happens.
Yeah, and weird stuff does happen for sure. And when you have a guy like Damon, you got CJ, and both of them have really kicked it up again here over the slash stretch. Of course, anything could happen. And I guess if we're playing the optimistic game, we also haven't had a third guard like Norm before, so that's a tertiary ball handler that could really help us when we do go against the traps that, let's say, a hypothetical Kawhi Leonard and Paul George or Pat Bev, Rondo, you name it. The list goes on and on. Whoever on LA's running against us. We've got that third ball handler. We've got Anthony Simons, who's been shooting a lot better. We've got Carmelo Anthony, who's been really, honestly, he's been really good. He's been really clutch lately. He's
That's
been,
right.
he
Say
has
it.
been. I got it. I got it. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna give it to him. He's really earned it. Carmelo has earned it. He has proved me wrong. He's been such a good veteran piece, and especially since we've trimmed the lineup down to 8, he's been really. I mean, tonight we were kind of slogging through on offense, and he just kind of kept coming up with clutch shot after clutch shot to kind of get our offense going back again. And then also adding in Nurk obviously would be a huge piece too. So
Yeah, we finally, after all of these years, found a way to have 4 shooters on the floor at all times. So it's gonna be really
yeah,
interesting because even playing a team like Dame and CJ on that high pick and roll that we run every single possession. If
yes,
Dame can get the ball to Nurkic, I mean, someone will be wide open and they're going to be a 40% 3-point shooter. Um,
yeah.
so that's, I mean, that means that you can't trap nearly as hard, or because either you can't trap at all or you have to be able to get back to your man.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see. They're going to be able to beat that press way more than they ever would have. I don't know if that's going to fully help enough, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We will see how it goes. Again, we got 2 more games coming up against the Suns, and then we've also got the one against Denver to finish the season off. I'm going to do a quick score check right here. So currently, we've got a really good game going on. The Lakers and the Rockets right now, 108 to 104. The Lakers are currently up. If Lakers lose, we've clinched at the very worst the 6th seed. And if the Lakers win tonight, we still need a win and Lakers a loss in their
Probably
next game
just, I
too.
think just a win if they win.
Yes, you are right. I'm so sorry.
Because we
No,
won.
it is. It would be. I apologize. We would need at that point. We would need either a win or a loss by the
Yeah.
Lakers in order to clinch that at least the 6th spot. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens here, but I think that things are looking after tonight a lot better for the Portland Trailblazers. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our quick post game little recap. Again, we're going to be hosting these a lot more frequently. We'll be on tomorrow night after the Suns game. We'll be on probably for a longer time. I would say we're probably going to do more of a full show on Sunday. We'll try and get that one promoted up pretty well. And then our plan is to try and be on here after every playoff game. There might be a couple games that might not be feasible, but I think in general, we're going to try and be on here. So definitely stay tuned. If you want to find us, we're on Spotify at Y Ball Starters, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the same at Y Ball Starters. We just had a really cool interview with Tanner and Jacob Groves of now the Oklahoma Sooners University. They were the NCAA tournament legends at Eastern Washington University. So we have a cool interview up with them that you can find linked to any of our social media pages and Spotify. And that will be wraps for us tonight. Until next time, signing off.